I suggest you settle down, make yourself a cup of joe. I think it's going to be another long one. Okay, no messing about, no introduction, straight into the comics this week. There are a lot of them and I'm going to do them by publisher. So I've only got one for Dynamite, and that's Green Hornet issue 7. And I have to say, I do find it difficult reviewing this title. And it's not because it's bad, because I am really enjoying it. It's just, it's difficult to say anything about it without telling you the story, because Wade does put a lot of story into this. It isn't just about the pretty pictures. There's a whole heap of story in here as well. But basically, this issue, it has got a new venture for Britt Reed. The Green Hornet reveals himself and his secret identity to who will hopefully be a trusted friend and aid. And the kind of line between Green Hornet being classed as a villain, this kind of mafioso boss, and him being a traditional hero, that line is getting thinner and thinner, and has been for a couple of issues now. And obviously we've had Kato's worries about this, and now we have his new partner in crime, we'll say. And of course, we now have Nazis. Basically, if you're a fan of the pulps, if you're a fan of Mark Waid, you'll probably like this book. Trillium issue 4, and once again, this title just continues to delight me, excite me. But has Jeff Lemire prematurely ended this title? It's an 8-issue mini, but given what happened at the end, where's to go now? We have the Atabithians. That's those blue alien creatures. They have crossed over into our world through the kind of temple time-travelling portals. And poor Clayton has been transported to the future world. So that's kind of the two storylines we have going on in this issue. Our blue alien-y type people, they've kind of hooked up with the savages of the jungle. They seem to have a lot in common and are quite friendly to each other. And we get lots of cave paintings depicting what is potentially happening and the story that is to come. Unfortunately for Clayton, he is basically being tortured for information from Paul on the other side of the portal. And of course we have the big explosion at the end. Lemire's artwork in here is beautiful as always. It's kind of a balance between this kind of really messy style with a kind of like childlike exuberance, and I just love it. It's a great title. People don't have to worry now with the odd page changes, turning it upside and down. It's a straight face page from start to finish. I particularly liked it. Hence Kind issue 2 came out this week, and this is basically your anti-Fables book. Forget about your kind of fancy friendly fairy stories, the kind of tales of the moralistic mythologies. This is explaining very much the premise of this book. The Hinterkind are those creatures that we know from Fables, the big orcs, the 6-armed orcs, the fauns, the fairies, the magical queens, the winged ladies. All those, they did exist, but humankind kind of killed them almost to extinction, and they have hidden themselves away from humanity, from what's left of them. But of course, due to this apocalypse that has happened since, the tides have quite literally turned. Humankind is almost, I would guess, in the minority now, and the Hinterkind are coming out of their hiding place, and there is an oncoming battle, a war maybe between the two. What else? We obviously get introduced to, in this issue, a lot more characters, which kind of fleshes out the Hinterkind. We've seen a lot of the Humankind, and it just is a nice building issue. It's only issue 2. I don't expect some big, huge reveal as yet. Ian Edgington is building this story, and it's interesting, and it's well worth a look. Fans of Fables, this is a nice change of pace, but in the same ilk. Moving on to the mainstream DC titles, we've got Green Lantern 25, and we see the fallout from the Lights Out event that has just gone, and the Green Lantern Corps' decision not to use their rings, which clearly perturbs Hal somewhat. He's not happy that he can't use the power of his ring. I mean, really, we forget this, he's really only just got his ring back. After having the makeshift one that Sinestro had given him. So Hal has his useless idea number 634, where to kind of appease the Green Lantern Corps, he's decided that, okay, we will police the use of the ring's power. And how do we do that? Well, we use our rings. The hypocrisy is not lost on anybody in this title, and I just wonder, with this story, has Vendetti kind of written themselves into a corner? The whole point of the Green Lantern title and all the other titles that have come out from this, for, you know, like the Red Lanterns and the New Guardians and all this, was that they have these rings that do amazing things. Where does the story now come from when they can't use their rings? Or they shouldn't use their rings, because Hal uses it plenty in this title. Some people will say, well, that's where the story's going to come from. How are they going to beat the baddies if they're not going to use their rings? But as we saw in this issue, Hal really doesn't seem to have taken this seriously. It's a colourful Green Lantern book as always. There's plenty of action. I'm just worried about the storyline and where this is going to end. Every time I pick up Batman Detective Comics, I'm always worried because it hasn't been the most stellar of titles in our new 52. There's not really been that kind of outstanding storyline that, say, the other Batman title, Batman, has had with Scott Snyder. And it's kind of coasted along. It's been really just terrible. And then there's been kind of glimmers of hope. So, issue 25, it was a year 1 tie-in. I didn't really expect a great deal. But hey, it was actually a good, solid title. Why? Because basically Batman wasn't in it. This is Lieutenant James Gordon's history from year 1. Coming to Gotham and dealing with the corruption that's going on in Gotham. We've had the Red Hand Gang. That's a completely different gang. Do you remember them? The Red Hood Gang. Batman's put pay to them, and now we've got these kind of pretenders, these gangs that are kind of mimicking the Red Hood Gang. But with their own little twist, and here we have the Black Mask Gang. So it's up to James Gordon to thwart these gangs that are coming into Gotham to just cause mayhem and lift crime rates. But he not only has these gangs to deal with, but there is obviously the corruption going on within Gotham's own police force. So he has that again to battle against. Layman really does pace this book well, and it was such an enjoyable read. Sorry. And okay, Batman does turn up for one page, but it's expected. It is a Batman title after all. The backup story adds a little bit more to what we saw in the last issue with the kind of flock of bats that took away, lifted someone out of an alley and basically ate them. It kind of adds a little bit of a teaser to what is going on in that storyline. Really good. Which is a pain, because this was one of the titles was I thinking, going to be dropping this in the new year. No, I don't know. It's Swamp Thing issue 25, and may I just use a Mad Max Beyond the Thunderdome quote? 2 men enter, 1 man leave. 2 men enter, 1 man leave. Yes, this is the knockout smackdown match between Swamp Thing and Jason Woodrue to find out who will be the avatar for the Green. Who's going to win? You think it's going to be obvious. Is it though? It's again, Charles Soule is doing such a fantastic job on this title. I've almost forgotten Snyder ever was on here. Charles Soule is a perfect fit for this book. He gives it that old school kind of Vertigo feel from the Alan Moore days, and even in this issue, does he deliberately give a little nod to a past Alan Moore Swamp Thing storyline where Swamp Thing had his time in space? I thought that was really nice. The fight itself, there's a lot of fake outs, but ultimately there is only one winner. But who is it? I'm not going to spoil that for you. Cracking read, great artwork as always. Just pick Swamp Thing up. This title ain't going nowhere. And now we move on to Image, which was pretty much the bulk of my books this week. A lot to get through. Finally, 10 grand is here, issue 5. We waited long enough for it, and that's because Temple Smith decided to off he went, which kind of left Straczynski in a bit of a fix. So he's brought CP Smith along to go on to art duties. And it is very different. Straczynski cleverly explains this away with a kind of transition between our world and this kind of limbo world. So it is going to look a very different place. However, I just wish it would actually have been reversed. CP Smith had done our world and Temple Smith had done the limbo world, because Smith has this kind of, it's kind of a very flat, clean looking style. I mean, Joe, our main character in here, he looks positively handsome in this issue, and this isn't the Joe we expect. He does have that Constantine vibe, very dishevelled, kind of shady character. In here he looks very much the hero, and it kind of spoils the storyline. We've got Joe going through this limbo environment with people attacking him, whether they are souls, whether they are these soul eaters. He has a conversation with the guy who takes you across the river of death. And that's an interesting concept that they throw in there. It's still a great read. I like the premise of this. I like where it's going. Unfortunately, the art isn't really doing it for me now. There's none of that. I can almost smell the blood, the sweat, the horror. You know who would probably have been a better fit for this book? Fraser Irving. After his work on Zombie, pre-New 52, when he was doing that, Straczynski, if you're watching, go find him, give him some work. New number 1 came out from Image this week. It's Alex and Ada, and we are here in a future land world where everything is controlled by the thoughts in your head through a chip in your neck. And we centre on Alex, our main character, wandering through his morning and his day. We find out he's, I'd say, recently been broken up with his current girlfriend. However, it's probably been about 5 or 6 months, but this still has hit him hard. Not even a birthday celebration for him seems to lift his spirits. Androids are back in fashion, yes. Even Grandma has herself a young model to keep her company. And these things aren't cheap. Granny is obviously a wealthy lady, almost $1 million, pounds, whatever the currency we're going to get in the future. So it's a lot of money to spend out on one of these, what is essentially a pleasure doll. But Granny's equally wealthy because guess what? She buys her grandson one of these. Obviously, female variety, and that's where Ada comes in. Jonathan Luna, very quiet, sedated start for this story. I am sure there is some surprises to come. I like the simplicity, the almost plainness of the artwork by Sarah Vaughan in this. It's going to be one of those, it's going to be a grower. I don't think we're going to get something very impactful straight away, but hold on and I think we will definitely be rewarded. Fatale issue 18 came out this week and whoa, chaos ensued from all directions. We have the fallout from Jane's attempted rape and her killing her attacker, and everyone in the house, apart from obviously the girl, coming to her aid to figure out what we're going to do. So it kind of goes from hiding the body to drowning the body to eventually cutting this body up into bits. Jane's power, or this influence she has over men, seems to be pretty much running amok, and it is garnering some rather unwanted attention. Fortunately, with a quick painted kind of satanic sign, I don't know, some sort of mystic sign into a mirror, kind of cuts the smell of her influence off from those she'd rather not know where she is. Phillips really shows in this issue that he's not just all about your basic comic book paneling, and he has a little play with page structure in here, and it works really well in a very kind of vision, dreamlike state. So it's nice to see Sean Phillips, for what I've seen of his work, kind of coming out of his comfort zone. And then we have the music video shoot where Jane's powers, well, they just go haywire. She loses herself in the moment for this track that's meant to be the best thing ever written and played, and loses control of herself, and of course the people in the video shoot end up having sex, ripping all their clothes off, and there is yet another death. One wonders, is this now the climax where Jane is going to have to move on once again, and the storyline will move on to perhaps another era of her life? Great stuff once again. Fatale, firm favourite for me, and if you've not been reading this, plenty of trades to catch up on, and well worth it. One more after this, It's East of West, issue 7, and while Death is off for a trip down a very long spiralling staircase, this book is predominantly about his fellow horsemen of the apocalypse. And it's Hickman's giving us basically the backstory and history of these horsemen, how they came together, how this temple, this damn it, what's it called? Armistice, that was it, I don't need to look, it's Armistice. How this temple got built. What more can I say? It's a slow mover, I know. The story grows slowly, but there is a story there. And between Hickman and Dragotta, who just still the most beautiful are, they manage to keep, yet again, this balancing act of the kind of the very surreal and horrific and the sci-fi element and the western element. You never get too much of any of them. So if you're not a western fan, there isn't a lot of that in there. If you're not a sci-fi fan, there isn't a lot in there. If you don't like the horror, surreal stuff, there's not a lot in there. But altogether, it makes a really good package. So the first trade, I believe, is out now. If you've not read East of West, probably is a good idea to read it in trade. It will feel like things are moving along more. But I'm enjoying a Hickman book, and this doesn't happen very often. And finally, Morning Glories, issue 34. And again, it's another kind of fallout issue. This time, if you're reading this, you'll remember from the last issue, the death of Hiseo. I've got to get this right. It is Hiseo. And basically, it's our gang coming together to pay their respects while arguing with each other and annoying each other. And the way... They don't even realise it, but they are actually a solid group. You know, there are the snarky comments, there are the power plays for leader, but they are coming together as a group. And it's just how they decide to use this group dynamic in order to, well, basically put it to the man and escape from the academy. Interspersed in this is a story from 3 years earlier, and it involves one of our characters, Jade, and the car crash that she was in with her mother. And it does raise a very big question. If you've not read this yet and you are reading this and you don't want things to be spoiled, I suggest just forward it on a little bit, because I can't really explain this without actually saying what happens at the end. So 1, 2, 3, okay, spoilers. The ending. We've had Jade all the way through this issue kind of coming to terms, having the funeral of her mother's death. And the way she doesn't accept it. The way she did think of there being a God and being a very religious person. And then, of course, that being taken away from her, because why would her mother be taken away from her? But then there's that last scene at the car crash where either one of two things happened. Either we had another Hiseo Jun leaping bodies between each other, in this time between Jade and her mum, and I wouldn't want, in some ways I wouldn't want that to happen because it's already been used. But then the other side of it is then Jade's power, or she has a power to bring the dead back to life. It's Morning Glories. It's crazy, it's confusing, but every time I say this, I love it. Wow, well, I need this. That's it for this week. Thank you all for watching. If this is your first time here, please subscribe. Why not? Give it a big thumbs up and a comment in the box back down below. Always appreciated. And you never know, might reply to them as well. See you next week.